Hello, magical ones. Welcome to the Faerie Witch vlog. Today, I'm the Faerie Witch, and today we are talking about dark fairies. And so I thank you for joining us in this episode today. I hope that you'll find it interesting and maybe learn something or two. Dark fairies, obviously, this dark fairy season, at least that's what I call Halloween. And, October 31st, that's kind of, our day. We make it more for the dark fairies. Now, I'm not always talking about celebrating the malicious fairies, because there definitely are some. I will discuss them in this video, but usually I kind of focus on the ones that are, darker in color, ones that you might think are up to no good, but really aren't. And so that's what we kind of celebrate and work with on Halloween. But I will discuss some of the others because you need to know that there are some fairies out there that are unsavory, they're malicious, they're up to no good. You do not want to talk to them or interact with them. You do not want to invite them into your home. So we're going to cover some of that. So to begin with here, let's get into some of the history. So dark fairies aren't dark just because they're dangerous. They're called that since they are connected with the earth element, like the Bukas of Cornwall. They live in dark places, like under stairs or in a basement. Now, dark fairies and some elves of the Unseelie Court, and the Unseelie Court is usually that is kind of, they're considered to be the wicked, the darker court of the fairies. They're stronger during the colder seasons. There are the ones who mean to do harm, but oftentimes in novels, writers will talk about the Unseelie Court um, as being, the bad guys. But that's not necessarily the case. But as I was saying, um, the dark fairies and elves of the Unseelie Court can be against humans because they don't trust us. They also reside in the dark places. Dwarves are most well known of the dark fairies because they're keepers of the earth and the gems and the minerals. They're metal workers. They make swords and magical items like jewelry. You should never take anything of theirs, or you're going to suffer their wrath, because in order to have their friendship, it would be advantageous, of course, since they are the keepers of the earth. They can aid your plants and your trees to grow. Maybe they'll occasionally allow you to have a gem or a stone, and you might find it, left for you, or you might just find it somewhere, and you can use it in your fairy magic practice. So it's good to have fairies on your side. You don't want to go out of your way to offend them or turn them off, because even the Seelie Court, the considered to be the good guys, they can turn on you. So you just never know. But again, we're talking about dark fairies here, and these are just some of my little dolls and collectibles. And I wanted to focus on that a little bit for Halloween. And as I said, that you want to be friends with the Fae if you can be. Otherwise, just avoid them. Just leave them alone, because you don't want to stir up a pot. Just let it go. Leave it alone, unless you know which ones you're actually conversing or connected to. And you got to feel safe, and you got to be careful because you just don't know. Now, like I say, there are different kinds of fairies you might want to avoid. So, one would be the Bogart. The name Bogart means malevolent genius. They come from the bogs that they travel and track in. They're actually really brownies, and the brownies are usually nice little fellows who live in your home. They'll help you, they'll take care of you. They'll clean your house at night, that kind of thing. But if you offend them, if you turn them off, they get angry. It's kind of like the Hulk. They get angry and they turn into bogarts. And once they turn into bogarts, they can't go back to being a brownie. So you've just created or helped create a really nasty son of a gun that you don't want to get to know. So that when they become bogarts, they are fierce. They hunt in marshes. They're described in different ways in folklore, but they're said to have oversized hands or limbs, animal features. They can be very hairy. Uh, they're just nasty looking, and they can be evil. They can be a sign of an omen of death, and they will follow their prey. Even if you moved out of your house, they'd still go with you. They're going to follow you everywhere unless you can get rid of them. It also says, but the one way you can get rid of them is if you decide to name them. So if you give them a name, that'll tick them off too. But I think going to folklore, that will actually send them away. So keep that in mind if you run into a bogart. Not that you want to, as I said. Another type of dark fairy that you do want to avoid is called the trow, or also the troll. I guess that's the name we would know more about. They're malignant, they're ugly, they're short, mischievous. They're nocturnal, so they go out at night. They like to venture out of their earthen den or mound, and they'll go into your house. They'll go into the house, and they do like music, and so they've been known in folklore to actually kidnap anybody who can play a musical instrument because they want to listen to the music. So, again, if you're a musician, good for you. I used to be, but yeah, keep that in mind. You might actually attract the fairies. And that can be good because plenty of fairies do like music. I mean, a lot of fairies like music, and it doesn't mean that they're trows. It just means they like the music, and it doesn't mean they're going to kidnap you or whoever's playing the instrument. But if they like it enough, they might just take you. So you want to always be protected. Protect yourself, keep your home safe, and just do your very best to keep them happy, but protect yourself. Another dark fairy I want to mention is actually a fairy queen, and it's not always clear that you can call her evil or not. From what I've researched, I would say no, but at the same time, again, you don't want to tick her off. You piss her off, and she's going to get nasty, just like any fairy would, as I've mentioned. But her name is Nick Nevin. And if you're interested in the spelling, that is Nicnevin. And Nicnevin is called Queen of the Unseelie Court, which I've already mentioned, Queen of the Witches, and she's also called the Grandmother Witch. Now, she appears in folklore around the 16th century and in poems by Alexander Montgomery and the writing of Sir Walter Scott. She's mentioned a lot. She's got skills and knowledge of casting balls of yarn and thread, which could be a reference to enchantments. So she's able to manipulate items and cast spells. She's also been described as, excuse me, riding with her court, with members of her court, in a long gray mantle, which I think is another word for like a cape. Um, and she carries like a powerful wand that can change water into dirt and vice versa. She's also connected to November 11th and that's kind of like her day if you wanted to connect to her, if you wanted to speak with her, if you wanted to work with her powers and strengths, if she's willing to work with you. That's kind of like her celebration day or her strongest day of the year. And she's also connected to storms. Now, again, I think that's kind of related to the fact that she is a dark fairy, and technically, and because she's powerful, she can manipulate the climate and the weather, and it shows that again, you don't want to mess with her and upset her, because if she can do that, she can bring down a storm on your head. So again, it's something to think about, and you can research her more. Just look her up on the internet. Morgan Daimler is one of my favorite authors of fairy lore. She studies folklore. She mentions Nick Nevin and her Fairy Queens book, and I did get some of my source from that, so you can always buy her book if you want to find out more about Nick Nevin and the other queens. But again, I would say that she's kind of considered a dark fairy. I put her in the dark fairy classification, but I'm not saying that she's evil. I'm just saying that I would put her as a dark fairy. Another type of dark fairy that you definitely want to avoid are called the red caps. And the red caps, well, they're just darn right nasty, and they're dangerous to us. They're out to kill. That's what they do, and they even rip apart their prey. Then they soak their caps, their hats, into the victim's blood. So hence the name, the red cap. They're associated a lot with England and Scotland folklore due to the fact that those countries' landscapes, the castles, and the historical battles over the centuries can be, I guess, pretty bloody. You have to read history. Like I said, my boyfriend knows more about history than I do. My mother studied English history. She would know more if she were still around. But again, because of all the bloody wars and, the War of the Roses and all those historical battles, the Redcaps, I guess, pretty much had a good time during all those battles. So again, that's where they get their name from. And again, that's another kind of fairy you want to definitely avoid. So then in the lighter side of this video, I want to talk a little bit more about another dark fairy, which we I'm sure have all heard. And this is the DVD of the first movie, Maleficent. And I have my Disney Mattel doll, Maleficent. And of course, Angelina Jolie started in this movie, and this doll is fashioned after her. But we remember Maleficent from the Sleeping Beauty Disney version. Now, if you haven't seen those movies, okay, there may be some spoilers in here, so just be aware. But in the Disney movie, Maleficent that's the animated one, and that was back, I forget when they made that. Was it back in the 70s maybe they made that movie? Anyway, Sleeping Beauty, the main focus is the curse, and Sleeping Beauty, of course, had this curse put on her by Maleficent, and she'll prick her finger when she's 16 years old, and she'll die. Now that's the animated one. Now the three good fairies in the animated movie, the Merryweather makes the wish that instead of dying, the princess just falls into a deep sleep until her true love kisses her and wakes her up, and then the curse is broken. So the animated one is different from the actual Sleeping Beauty fairy tale. Okay, so it is a different version. It's nicer, it's sweeter, it's more romantic, that kind of thing. And of course, Maleficent in that one, Walt Disney definitely made her out to be, malicious, and she's out to get them, and she's out to, she'd rather kill the princess out of jealousy and anger, simply because the king and queen did not invite her to the baby's christening ceremony. Now, that's the animated one. Now, in this one, with Angelina Jolie, this is the real live one, the newer one of the 2000 era. So this one, they changed the story around, and they actually give you a background of Maleficent. And this time, they present her as being, yes, She is a dark fairy. She's not an evil witch. She's a dark fairy. And she didn't start out being negative. She started out being kind and sweet and, was happy and took care of her fellow beings and just liked to fly around. And she was like a safeguard. She protected everybody, even as a child, as an orphan child, within the fairy realm of the Moors. So then when things change when she gets older, because she falls in love with the human king or human fella named Stefan, who actually becomes King Stefan. When he wrongs her, that's what she completely gets absorbed in revenge and, I wouldn't say evil, but she's, revenge. She's angry at him. She wants to get even with him. So that's when she curses his child, which is, Beauty, or actually Aurora. Aurora is her name. So I won't give you the ending of that, because if you haven't seen the movie, you need to. And they did make a sequel, and the sequel is really good too. And supposedly they're making a third one. And that would be great to see a third sequel. I'm curious to see where they go with that. But again, the stories keep changing. But at least in this version, they give you an idea of her background. So she's actually a fairy. They talk about it, they show it, and she has wings, then she doesn't, so this kind of thing. So it definitely, if you're interested, check out those movies, these movies. See the Sleeping Beauty one too. So from Disney. So you've got all three, different perspectives, and then read the actual fairy tale about Sleeping Beauty. And that way you get the whole perspective and you get to see how they've changed the character. But anyway, as far as dark fairies, Maleficent is still my favorite. There are some others who are mentioned in maybe comic book story or novels, that kind of thing. Queen Mab is another one who's often described as being an evil fairy, but it's kind of up in the air on your perspective on that one. So again, you can look her up too, but again, she's kind of presented in movies and in stories as being, a nasty son of a gun, and sometimes she's portrayed as a fairy and sometimes she's not. So it just depends on what story you're reading. But again, that's another one that you can look up. So again, I hope you found that this was an interesting video. I wanted to keep it short, but again, for this holiday season, we want to just talk about the dark fairies. So thank you everyone for tuning into this video. I really do appreciate it. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Have a little ambiance back there. And if you'd like to donate to us, please click on our PayPal link, which is on this channel. And please subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you come back and see other videos on this subject and other subjects related to fairies. There will be more coming for Halloween. So thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day. Have a fairy day. We'll see you in the next one.